Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the reading of the fic, The Other Side of Things. Here's the summary. At age 10, Midoriya Izuku was kidnapped. At age 15, he reappears at the USJ with the League of Villains and is captured by Eraserhead. Let the chaos unfold, and give Tsukauchi a coffee. This fic is 11 chapters, with just shy of 35,000 words. Here's Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Prologue. Green eyes stare at the one-way mirror, and although Naomasa knows he can't possibly see him, he feels watched by the villain smirking his way. His cheek rests in his right palm, the fingers of his left hand idly thrumming atop the interrogation table. The quirk-suppressant handcuffs are perfunctory, since the boy is quirkless according to the files. The kid unnerves him. So, that is the young man Aizawa-kun captured at the USJ. Naomasa spins around and looks down at Nezu. He nods once before walking him over to the door leading into the interrogation room. He swallows heavily, hand on the handle when Nezu speaks up again, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't be so nervous, detective." "Easier said than done," he replies and finally enters. The kid's grin impossibly widens as he sits up straight, spreading his hands as wide as the linked cuffs will allow. "Detective Lie Detector and Principal Nezu. To think you two would come to personally interrogate little old me. It flatters me." His voice is deeper than Naomasa expected from the looks of him, carefree despite his situation. But underneath it, there is the slightest hint of measured calculation that makes him shiver. Next to him, Nezu, whose specialty is interrogating villains too smart for their own good, remains unfazed and instead returns the smile, all teeth. "Midoriya Izuku," he starts, black eyes sharp. "Why, of course I wouldn't miss the chance to talk to the person who broke into my school. Don't be silly." Naomasa expected some sort of reaction from the villain, but his unnerving smirk and sharp eyes remain unchanged. He watches them closely as they sit down, and Naomasa puts the pitiful file they have on him on the table between them. A green eyebrow rises mockingly as he looks at the file. "I have my own folder." Nezu raises his paws. "Why, of course you do." His smirk grows a fraction still. "Not very thick, though, I see." Naomasa clears his throat, more to calm his nerves than anything else. "For the record, this interrogation will be recorded, and my quirk lie detector will be active and used throughout." The villain rolls his eyes. Yeah, can we get to the fun part yet? I've been here for 2 hours and have places to be, you know." At the glare he throws at him, the teenager shrugs sheepishly. "Fine, I'll take this more seriously." Turning to Nezu, he jabs a thumb at Naomasa. "Is he always such a spoilsport, or is it just my charm?" Choosing to ignore the attempted banter, Naomasa instead opens the file to have something to look at that wasn't bottomless green eyes. Midoriya Izuku, age 15, quirkless, reported missing at age 10. "I was kidnapped." He looks up. "Pardon?" "I was kidnapped," he repeats, expression unchanged. "And I'm no longer quirkless." Nezu speaks up then, asking a question they suspect the answer to but need confirmed. "Who kidnapped you?" Midoriya leans back in the chair, elbows resting on the arms and hands folded. His answer chills Naomasa to the bones. "All for one." No, he must have misheard. "What?" The teen rolls his eyes. "You heard me the first time." Nezu, calm as always, leans forward with gleaming eyes, and Naomasa is incredibly grateful that at least one of them still has their wits about them. "How about you tell us from the beginning, Midoriya-kun?" Midoriya shrugs and averts his eyes slightly. "He claimed my intellect caught his interest. He took me on my way home from school. The next thing I know, he forces a quirk on me and attempts to mold me into his loyal follower." Naomasa frowns. "Attempts?" "Well," he starts, locking eyes with him. "Like most kids, I wanted to be a hero like All Might. I wasn't especially inclined to follow the very man who had almost killed my idol, you understand?" Shrugging again, he leans forward, arms crossed on the table, an expression unmoving. "Regardless, I was a 10-year-old child, far from home, in the lair of the worst villain the world has ever seen. So I was forced to adapt. I did what he told me to do. I became the assistant to his personal mad scientist, helped keep him alive, helped create his Nomus, became his hacker and strategist." He clicked his tongue in irritation, expression souring. I became the babysitter for a temperamental man-child 5 years my senior. And now you're here. For the first time since the start of the interrogation, the teen seems caught off guard, but he collects himself almost immediately. He looks at Nezu. Now I'm here, he agrees. Now Masa frowns, looking back at the file. You say you were his personal strategist. Looking back up at him, he tries to sound nonchalant. Must be a blow to your ego that your plan failed. The smirk is back, eyes narrowed, and the villain taps the table with his index finger lazily. Did it? You were captured. Now Masa can't help the irritation creeping into his voice. Midoriya got under his skin in all the worst ways, more and more the longer the interrogation went on without his quirk registering a lie. The teen reaches forward, tapping his file as he rests his cheek in his right palm like he was bored. I'm quite sure my file should contain my IQ test from when I was 8. It does. 190 at the age of 8, and now Masa doesn't want to imagine what it would be now, after years of being honed and molded by a supervillain and a mad scientist. Midoriya waves his left hand lazily. Now, Detective, I would like to ask you a question. What makes you think my plan failed exactly? As the implication sinks in, now Masa gulps. You planned for Eraserhead to capture you. The villain claps slowly and drawls. My, that's right. Good job. At his side, Nezu keeps watching them silently, expression unreadable. Now Masa would have none of this, though. Why would you want to be captured? Shigaraki said you had planned to kill All Might at the USJ. So why would your plan include getting captured? From one second to the next, Midoriya's expression turns from smirking boredom to distress, large green eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I was kidnapped, Detective. Held captive for 5 years and tortured. Why wouldn't I jump at the chance to flee? No sooner had he uttered the words did the tears dry and the mask returned. He raises an unimpressed eyebrow. Now, Detective, I said I'd take this seriously, and I will. I was tasked with planning the murder of All Might, and will deny that. Naturally, I planned contingencies because, unlike Tomura, I am not an idiot. Tomura is a toddler in the body of a man with a terrifying quirk, but... He leans back and sighs deeply. He trusts me, for better or for worse. And as long as I manage to rein in his temper tantrums, All for One doesn't interfere. He waves disinterestedly again, and now Masa's starting to wonder if it's a nervous tic of his to move around so much. He wants to make Tomura his successor, though I'm not entirely sure what all that entails. At any rate, he takes a very hands-off approach, only guides him and gives him whatever he needs, whether it's the Nomu or me. Tomura tasked me with planning All Might's murder, but that wasn't the end of it. It's something even All for One hasn't managed, so I made several plans. Plan A was for the case that All Might was at the USJ but hadn't used up his 3 hours. At this point, Masa was too frazzled to stop and wonder how a child could know so much, and he was too afraid to ask. The Nomu was supposed to fight All Might, and I was to fight Eraserhead. I don't use my quirk, so I was the best match for him. Plan B was for the case that All Might had been an idiot and used up its time. In that case, Tomura, Kurogiri, and the Nomu were to scram once reinforcements showed up regardless of whether All Might was dead. No matter what the outcome was, I was supposed to let Eraserhead capture me. We wouldn't know whether All Might had already passed on One for All, so I should pretend to defect, play up the traumatized child and gain your trust, find out if there's a successor, and eliminate them. Nezu smiles, and Masa wonders if the following question was merely rhetorical. Then why didn't you? I don't need to pretend something that's true. Now Masa was quite done with the interrogation. Are you sure you aren't just pulling this because you don't want to admit that your plan failed? If Masa didn't know better, the villain's surprised expression could almost be believable. But his voice didn't match it at all. Detective, have I even once lied to you? His quirk hadn't detected anything, and he wasn't sure what to think about that. Midoriya chuckles. I helped make that Nomu, Detective. I was very diligent during my research into All Might's strength. His smirk was razor-sharp, as he pins him with his cold green eyes. I repeat, Detective, I am not an idiot. His blood runs cold. All this, just to escape. Now Masa's voice is low, and he has to ball his hands to fists underneath the table to prevent them from shaking. Midoriya regards him quizzically, and finally looks more his age. You don't simply run from the League, from the Underworld's boogeyman. As far as All for One is concerned right now, I'm currently convincing you that I'm nothing but a harmless, traumatized child, all while sussing out if there is a successor for One for All. That's the official plan." He leans forward and regards them with what must be the first honest expression he'd shown them that day. "I have no love for them. They kidnapped me when I was just a child. If you will let me, I will gladly help you bring them down." "Why should we trust you?" "Well, did I lie?" Not as far as Namasa's quirk was concerned, it had unnerved him more than anything else. But before he could think of a response, there was noise outside the door. It flies open with a loud bang, and a crying woman storms in, closely followed by Sansa desperately trying and failing to keep her away from the villain. What he sees next makes him doubt the past hour had happened at all. The woman, Midoriya Izuku, he would later learn, flings her arms around the teenager, tears running down her cheeks like waterfalls. The villain sits ramrod straight in his chair, green eyes wide and his carefully crafted mask slowly breaking. He reaches to cling to his mother's shirt as a wild sob tears from his throat and begins crying into her shoulder. And despite his flawless innocent act before, Namasa has no doubt that this time his reaction is genuine, and for the first time he truly, honestly looks like an abducted child, finally returning home. Namasa isn't sure what to make of that fact. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 1 of The Other Side of Things. I hope you all enjoyed this fic. It's one I reread a lot. I found it forever ago, and I've just loved it ever since. Let me know your thoughts and reactions to Chapter 1. Chapter 2 will be up next, and as always, thank you so much for listening.